Thank you, Chris.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, well, you grab the cookies too.
So
I'll take a couple.
I did a little bit of a
Okay. Here,
scan here, and I heard the range
sweet
of,
up
we've
here.
got it all figured out. We are in a dilemma. We can't resolve this, and that's understandable. That these are really, really hard issues, and there's all sorts of barriers. And we purposefully wanted to identify needs first, not barriers. What are the needs of the community? And so let's do a report out. And then in the meetings that come in 2019, we have a couple people coming with some creative ways. Well, they will describe some creative ways that have been tried in other communities. And so we'll start getting to what are the barriers, how do you get around them. But for right now, we're looking at the needs and pretty much what do we want to see. So I'm going to start with the table in the back, because they started with a broader concept of community character. Do you want to go ahead and report out?
Yeah, do you just want me to use the questions?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
I'm not going to describe it. I'm just going to take your response sheets.
Okay. Well, good luck reading my great handwriting. So the first, we had community character and diversity. The first question on ours was how do we want our community to be? We stated that we wanted our community to be welcoming to all races, ethnicities, and religions, and to allow which would allow for more people to live and work in. Oh, I'm sorry.
For the camera.
I'm sorry. Do I need to start over?
No, just
Good.
outline.
So we basically, by being more inclusive, it would invite more people to live in the community, more people to work in the community, importantly, so that in basically structuring the housing needs so that it would meet, that inclusion of the diverse groups that are out there. The second question, what image of the community do we want people outside our jurisdiction to have of us? Basically, the image that we came up with is that we're welcoming to all who wish to live here, and that we value their presence in the community. There were some discussions at the table that talked about, those that were, from minority groups that moved to Waunakee and, and ultimately left Waunakee because they just felt that they had been, marginalized, that they weren't really welcome in the community, which is not something that we would, obviously, I don't think anyone in this room would want to hear, but, it was a reality for a few families. The third question was, how can we assure a welcoming community for all, and how does housing play into being a welcome community? So credit to Tom, who left at the very beginning, but he stated, and it was repeated here by Maria as well, that we should reach out to the different groups in the community. We do have minority groups in the community. We should reach out to them and embrace maybe do some celebration of their type of diversity and their programs that they do in there, like reaching out with the Latin community, or Latin American community, doing events that would be focused around them, or other different minority communities that might be in here, instead of just thinking a little bit outside of the box beyond the events that we currently engage in as a community. And also, I know you said that we shouldn't really focus on transit, more on housing, but I mean, it kind of came up again that if you want a diverse workforce and you don't really have the diversity here yet, and you want to encourage diverse workforces, a lot of specific communities maybe don't really want to own cars, and so if you want them to work here and work in those service industry jobs and things like that, if you want to help them live here, you have to help them commute around here as well. So just an idea that was thrown out. And also definitely increasing the housing stock of that affordable housing that would attract, the more diverse communities to the area. That's it.
Anyone have any question or comment on that, for that? And, I've struggled a bit with the language of how do we talk about diversity, because we're talking about housing, and so we tend to talk about diverse housing stock that will enable a diverse population to live here. But there is a strong argument to be straight up out front and say, how does our community benefit from having ethnic, racial, age, gender diversity, all of that? So thank you for tackling that. Who wants to go next?
Our topic was young adult families. The first question was, what are the unique issues for young families that would influence the type of housing that is best suited for them? Child care availability and cost, student loans, credit card debt, being in areas where there's services and amenities such as parks, libraries, walkability, crime, is it safe? The type of house, does it have a yard, does it have a fence? Because if you have children, you would definitely want those. For many families, a question that's asked is, are pets allowed? And the types of schools in an area. How could the housing develop address these issues? Land trusts, smaller lots, smaller homes that are more functional with less glitz, government subsidies perhaps, or other programs that are available. How can housing be made affordable for limited income young adults with families? One thing that we talked about is it doesn't do any good to get an affordable home if you're going to pay through the nose for utilities. They have to be energy efficient. We need, perhaps, we need to do something as a municipality to come up with ideas for childcare to make it more affordable. In some areas, if there's a school available that has extra classrooms, they could be used for, a classroom could be used for a daycare. We don't have that situation in Waunakee, but there may be thinking outside the box where we could make childcare more affordable. Again, mass transit. And we need houses that are built for everyone. I saw a small segment, I didn't get to see all of it, pertaining to building houses that are safer, better built, and more efficient for everyone so that we're not constantly tearing places apart for the disabled or for the elderly. It's called smart building, and perhaps we should look into something like that. And I would just like to see housing for young families and everybody in general to have good quality of life for everybody.
Anyone in this table want to add anything? Okay, do you have any questions or comments for housing for young families?
I do have a comment to add on what was said. Some schools, some school districts, some cities have after-school daycare for kids that are in school, so that they come early and they get picked up later, and it is probably more affordable because they don't have to pay for the busing to the. Well, I guess they don't have to pay for the busing anyway, but it's just easier and you feel a little more secure having your kids in a school than going out to a daycare.
My kids went to one like that. That's very much. I think this group is similar. So, are you ready to go next?
Yes, we have young adults that are single, not necessarily looking for homes. What are unique issues for young adults that would influence the type of housing that is best suited for them? Student loans, no savings, people needing flexibility. They're looking for a place to be for a few years, but might move for career or other reasons. And then also being on probably an entry-level income, and not yet needing a landing place, not ready to buy a home, but I guess we said that. And then how could housing develop address these issues, and how could housing be made more affordable? We said mixed lifestyles and needs, which sometimes is amenities or just the styles, the way they're built. And the vision of that was kind of like courtyards or spaces that still feel individual but have an identity, like townhomes. We liked ones out there, not light, but kind of saw the ones that could address this, and more like open spaces but still multifamily.
So Erin, I have a question, because you were talking about not yet ready to land and be a homeowner. Are you talking about rental units?
Rentals.
Yeah, I think rentals that are offer some amenities. They're not something where some of those courtyard apartments, where they kind of had their own identity, but yet they're still part of they still have a common courtyard area or a social area for gathering, but, not necessarily places with long hallways where you go into your apartment and that's it. They want some socialization, but they still want a place that they're proud of to live in. They're just out of college, but they can work.
Yeah, it's like a neighborhood continuum. Does anyone else at this table want to add anything? Questions, comments?
And I hear what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense, but I'm wondering why a young professional with no children would want to move to Waunakee.
That's
Unless they have
Well,
family.
that is something we talked about.
Okay.
I mean, currently.
Unless you have family here.
Right, I don't know that they would, but what if they, yeah, if
It's
they
not-
were.
I had lunch with my friend, like, graduated in May, like, her and her, fiance boyfriend want to live, like, they work east and west side. She was like, we're renting right now, because we're not gonna be here in 3 years. We wanna move to a bigger city, but we wanna live in Waunakee. We looked at places that we can afford and we built apartments here. Like, that was just today, but.
But would they want to live if they could afford a
Yeah, they
rental
said
place?
their biggest
Small
worry
town.
was driving in the morning, commute from where they wanted to live. But I have a lot of friends I knew that would want to live here because they want to go out to the bars on a Friday night downtown. So
So there may be some
there's a
good
mix, yeah, that's that mixed
situations.
lifestyle. So
Yeah.
people's preference.
Other questions, comments about it? So we've introduced rental into the conversation. So thank you. We have two more reporting groups. You ready?
Senior?
Yep.
Okay. I have to admit, Mary wrote this up and it's so neat, I can read it, I can't. Unique issues for this group that influence the housing, easy accessibility, one floor, no stairs at the entrance, no stairs, few stairs as possible, wheelchair accessible, access to public transportation or transportation availability. Sometimes in senior housing, they do have a van or something, depending on, if this is a development. And we were looking at that also. Is there a director or somebody that offers some services to the independent living seniors? Excuse me. Sure. Thank you. How could the housing develop address these issues? Make room for different types of facilities, so maybe in a mixed area. Address multiple price ranges so that, I just have to say, it bothers me that at the Cannery, if you're in this one, you're low income, and if you're in the other wing, you're not. I don't do that, I would say.
I think also there's a basic dichotomy. Do seniors want to rent or do they want to own? So, if you go into a condo, that's more of an ownership type of thing, whereas if you go into apartments or even single-family homes, we can just rent.
Mm-hmm. But I think as we're looking, you need a different, multiple kinds of housing for seniors. There's not just one type of facility is going to be right for everybody. So you need some that are independent living. You need a continuum of care facility. We have one here in Waunakee, the Manor. But as our seniors age and people are looking for a nice place to live with, walkable and parks and things that are available, might be another one developed in the area where you have a continuum of care, meaning you have independent living and then assisted living and then nursing care facility. How could housing be made affordable for seniors on fixed incomes? Co-op housing, some type of manager or resource within the campus, social programming. That doesn't help the affordability though. I can't remember what we said about affordability.
But that's another amenity then.
Yeah, we're still on the amenities, but affordable for seniors living on fixed incomes. There are opportunities for low-income housing for seniors that are subsidized by the government. And we have one in Waunakee. We could probably use another one. But I would mix it in with, you know, incomes too.
And ages.
So
you're mixing
and otherwise, there are apartments available, but they are kind of pricey now that I look at it. So we could use some low-income, independent living facility. And a vision of what housing development looks like. We did the co-op housing in the pocket neighborhood. That pocket neighborhood is kind of my idea. You could have, you know, mixed income on one side, seniors on the other, and a recreation area where everybody can get together. You know, and a playground in back of the family ones, and maybe a social area in back of the senior ones.
That's where Kristen wants to live.
Yes.
We need to build that. Those are our visions for how to get this up.
Yeah. Mary Ellen, did you want to add anything?
Oh, I think she covered it quite well. I think that the thing, and I mentioned this earlier, the problem with seniors is that we already have a group of seniors who are living longer, and so the more seniors that are coming up, it's really going to get kind of congested because you can't bump people off.
She tells the truth. We have a demographics shift, and when Dan comes, he'll talk about that, of an aging population nationwide. But yes, you're right, that the demand is going up for all of those stages of housing that you've talked about.
I do have a comment. You kind of touched on it, but you know, you're talking mixed income, which is great, but also I think mixing, not just like, if you have just senior housing, you limit a lot of the social ability. Like if you could mix the age groups in there, like for example, like a young family could have their elderly neighbor watch their kids or their dogs while they're gone, and then they can check on the elderly neighbor, and there's a community built within there. But if you keep them segregated, it's harder to build a community bakery.
That is an excellent option, but I would make it an option because some seniors really don't want kids around.
They don't want to take care of their grandchildren.
They've been there, done that. Got this through.
Yes.
But that is, I agree with you. I mean, that's where I would prefer.
Yeah, it gets rid of the loneliness factor that some might run into. So when you can have your neighbors.
And I have a question. So with this mix that you're talking about, something that I'm like, where's this going to go? Because we're already a growing community with lots of things that are already here. Houses, businesses, a main street that's a state highway. Where do you put these type of things, you know, without disturbing maybe something that's already existing? I mean, land is very valuable around here. You know, it's like building a town within a town, and is that possible?
I think we need to have like a whole session on barriers. Just what the difficulties. It is difficult, and the value of land is definitely something that's come up several times in these discussions of what do you do. And one thing that can be done is look at other communities and see how they're getting around. A lot of urban areas will do infill and build up. But there's models, I think, in Middleton, that we might want to look into. I was thinking as you were talking that it might be really cool to have a delegation go on a tour and look at different housing, different communities and how they're addressing these issues. I was in Bayview a couple months ago in Madison, which is a it's a foundation where they have some money that helps support these houses, but it is a high population of Southeast Asian refugees, and they're dealing with the issue now of the elderly want to age in place. This is people who have lived in no other community but Bayview, and they're having to retrofit the homes in order to accommodate elderly who no longer can be in a second floor apartment or what. But it's super important culturally to keep that continuity there. So we can find examples of housing developments that have addressed some of these questions. I don't know about that one, but we'll look around and just see what have other communities done.
If you want to make it walkable and, you know, a housing development that's walkable, it has to be where all the other houses are right now on the main street. You know, that kind of thing. There isn't a lot.
There's not a lot
Although
of
they're
space.
beginning to be.
Or we have to spread out some of those retail places so that they are in more locations rather than centralized on Q or on Main Street.
I think they will be, yeah, they will be on Q, which is you know, that's a new area.
Right.
It's good.
But there are other areas as well.
Oh, I know.
So I think that that's something, we don't have a lot of retail built in around some of our current big communities, neighborhoods that have grown up over the last 12, 15 years. The retail piece is not there. The parks are, and other things are, but the retail isn't. And so therefore, the retail is getting shoved into just certain areas that are not going to be walkable for those people that are out in those little satellite neighborhoods. So,
You know, walkable, yeah, but from where I live, I can walk to High Peak.
But thank you for that comment, because I remember it came up when we had Steve Deller and Dave.
Dave, yeah.
Yeah, talking about how these developments lack any kind of retail center, and that you may need to think about how do you incorporate retail into certain neighborhoods and developments.
especially if new ones are being planned.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's several new areas in town that are just in the development stages right
Yep.
now.
They can't be all retail and they can't be all housing.
Yeah.
We have one group to hear
One
from.
more group.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for kicking us off the barrier into thinking about the questions. So I'll answer the questions, then I'll talk about our barrier. So the unique issues for limited income workers are options for transportation are generally required. It's hard to afford a car and gasoline and so forth, so options for transportation is required. Most likely public assisted, some type of public assistance in the housing is going to be needed, as well as was mentioned before, public assistance on childcare is going to be required. So you've got to have a supply of childcare that's going to happen, because I have a business that employs a lot of these single moms, racially diverse single moms that are reliant upon public assistance for their housing and their food and their childcare. So that would have to be available. And then another unique issue is what the diversity team was talking about is they're going to want to live where their community is going to feel like it's going to support them. So that's a unique need for them, is that they're not going to want to necessarily move to where they're not felt welcome. And there isn't enough critical mass to make that happen. So how can the housing developed address these issues? We have a big question mark by that right now. But how could housing be made more affordable is really the question that really gets there. And it's an extreme public assistance. And when you think about the fact that lots of the things we're talking about, and Ellen just alluded to it, land is really expensive here, and it's getting to be a scarce resource. So we're not manufacturing any more land to say, gee, let's put this multi-unit or multi-diverse community in and so forth. So again, I'm back on the barrier problem, but it would take extreme public assistance, somebody that's willing to donate some land that would be specifically for this purpose, and then it would be finding a spot that's going to be welcoming for it in this community, because it's already pretty well built up, and we don't have a lot of redevelopment type areas. You talked about cities that have that opportunity to say there's been blight that's occurred, and it's, okay, we don't have a lot of that available to us to be able to say, this is going to be a redevelopment, it's going to bring people that are workers, it's going to bring a lot of great things. So again, we're pretty well stuck on the barrier piece about where's the land, where's the money to make this happen, are pretty good barriers. But the group does have unique needs, and it really is around public assistance is going to have to be required.
So I have a challenge to the group based on what was just stated. For everybody to think about this for the next time, I'm going to add something to what Kristen and you are doing. So how do we subsidize the lower and more affordable housing? If we would all agree that most people are paying a premium to live in Waunakee right now because our housing is more, how can we expect those people now to say, I'm also going to subsidize on top of it and request that they do that? That's a challenge that we would face if we were going to go to that. If we can get there, that would be great, but I think it's going to be challenging. To Pat's comment about and by the way, I've tried not to influence this. In my position, I don't want to influence, about putting retail in various areas. We have tried that. If you look where Lucky's was, we had several restaurants there. They didn't make it. That was close to Savannah Village. We're blowing smoke, and now there's a new restaurant in there. There was a gas station that was supposed to get. The residents went nuts. They didn't want that there.
A few residents went nuts.
Okay.
Some of us were saying, yay, that's a great thing.
Agreed, but as you know, that group was very vocal and loud against that. So there has been attempts to do that, I think, in the past, and those things kind of got shot down, or they just weren't successful. We have to have enough to support that retail. Retail would come here if there was the ability for them to make money. People don't just go into retail out of the goodness of their hearts generally. They're looking for it to be a profitable center. So that's another thing we have to consider. Are we able to draw from Madison and Middleton and bring their monies to us within that retail? In order to do that, they have to be unique. It's not generally going to be your national chains that are going to come in to do that. So they have to be unique, which generally costs more money, and there's a lot more risk to that business. Okay? So getting them to do that is part of our challenge too. So giving incentives. You know, are there incentives available for us to give to those types of businesses for them to come here? Well, there's one avenue that the government that we have as a village. Do you guys know what that is? Tax incremental financing. And is that really a joyous topic for everybody in the community?
No.
Okay, so there's a lot of things to consider within these, especially with amenities. And for this group specifically, that we were talking about, our limited income workers to come here, do they want to live in Waunakee? Is the other question. Yes or no? We don't know that answer, but my guess right now is no. Because they're not coming here.
They can't come here.
They can't come here
because
they can't
There's
afford
no
it.
option for them to come here.
Okay.
I think
So-
single moms want to come here for their kids, they couldn't afford it, for school.
So my next challenge then is, does everybody want Waunakee to be desirable? A desirable place to live?
Depends on your definition of desirable. I would assume.
Yes.
Right.
Okay? All right. So right now, it's probably considered a desirable place for many people to come to. Is that fair?
For many people, yeah, but
Okay.
people that want a little more diversity wouldn't move here.
Exactly. So the group that's here in general, I think has come here for a reason. There's many communities in our state that we can go and buy a very, very nice house for $75,000. And those houses aren't selling in those communities. So we have the dilemma, I think, that we have a very unique community that people want to be in. I think all walks of life would want to be here, but it's not affordable. That's what we're tasked to figure out how we can get to there. But we have this whole divergence of the people that are here that have increased their home values. Their home values are very high. Doesn't matter where you are across the spectrum, they're high, okay? Because it's desirable for them, they want it. Our school district, we're a victim of our own success, in my opinion. That people are willing to pay more to live in Waunakee. They just are. And so now, because that bar has been raised, how do we get back to everybody having access? So I don't want to do a history lesson. I'd rather that you do that for us, because you would know it better than me. But I know that when I was young, there was several families that were the wealth of Waunakee, farming community families. That's where all the money was. And it transitioned in this whole time frame to we've had a lot of wealth come into the community from Madison. Your C-suite people, executives of the large corporations in Madison, a lot of them live here, or they're human resource people, or county high-level executives. That's brought in another aspect of it. So those houses that were built for those individuals with more money became what? Bigger homes. You don't see a lot of manufacturing people that were making $12 an hour that came in and built the big houses here. It just wasn't happening. So, am I going too long?
I want to give an opportunity for some responses.
So you said I was a lightning rod. I'm not meaning to be a lightning. I want you to think of these things as we're going through this. It's the same. I think somebody brought up having a grocer earlier was one of the amenities to have. Everybody knows we're talking about grocer right now for in the community. That's one aspect of what we're looking at. Just like our parks. So each one of these things plays an important role, but there's a lot of them that we have to take into account, which is why we're doing this.
I'm going to do a time check on you, Chris.
Say that?
This was a challenge for the next session to bring these issues back and to be ready to discuss them. I want to give folks 5 minutes to just check in with you about what you've just posed, all right? And we'll start with Neil, right? Neil.
It's not just my concern, Chris, to bring people in. It's to keep people here who have lived here for 30 and 40 years who can't afford to anymore. I mean, a lot of us feel like we're being pushed out. And if our house is paid for and we're paying our taxes and we can keep paying our taxes and our utilities and everything, that's fine. But at some point, there's going to be a point at which the people that have been here that long, their incomes may not keep up and they may not be able to pay their taxes. So then what happens?
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I was commenting more on some of the things that were people saying.
Right, but
Yes,
I want you
agree.
to realize it's not just new people coming in, it's also people staying here.
Agreed.
And so we're the same barrier, up against the same barrier of the rising cost of the house.
Are there state or federal housing grants that would help develop communities like this? Have you looked into that? I know a state, I don't know if they do developments, but WIDA has active, and I know there's federal programs for housing too.
Sure.
And if you're focusing on a particular population that needs like seniors or low and moderate income.
Todd, if you can maybe pipe in with this too, there's certain criteria that the developers have to go through to get those grants and receive those funding. Is that correct?
There's a variety.
Whether it's credits to any of those things,
There's a variety of programs. There's a question of whether we're eligible for some of those as well.
Because?
As some communities are ineligible for some programs like CDBG money because of income capacity is a category that disqualifies
How about
communities.
low-income housing, though? I know the federal government had a big program on that a while ago. I don't know if they're still around, but they help communities develop low-income housing. Anyway,
we can
it
definitely
might be
explore that as part of the process
Yeah.
here.
there's nothing, I think that's absolutely stuff we should be exploring in this whole process.
Do you want to speak to that?
Probably some people that can help us with that.
Pardon? Do you want to speak to that in terms of trying to bring in another speaker?
Oh, yes, yeah. So in January and February, we're going to be looking at bringing a couple different speakers that will address that question. And then those that we can't get, 'cause we are being mindful of it's on the one hand informative to sit and listen, but then we don't have time to discuss. We'll be doing some interviews on video of people who have, or firms that have developed some of the infill and affordable housing complexes in Madison and Middleton recently. We're specifically contacting the developers of City Row, which is on Johnson Street. That was a redevelopment project. And then over in Middleton, there's another, a heritage, and I forget if it's Hills or Block, that was developed also as affordable, but in a previously undeveloped piece of land. So we're looking at kind of those specific examples so they can speak to exactly how they did it, what they needed from the cities in both of those cases.
That was pretty amazing 5 minutes ago. She said, I'm thinking about this idea about videotaping people who have done this. So You went from, I'm thinking about this to we're going to have to do it. But we're hearing the questions are popping up, so we have to find the expertise that can answer those questions.
I had one question, more of like a history lesson for the retail areas that failed in Waunakee when you expanded. You mentioned Lucky's and a gas station. Were those like a single off retail, or was there like supposed to be multiple retails in it? Like, it's harder to go to like one shop, but if I have to hit 3 in a row, I'm going to go to a place there's more in one shop. I don't know the history of what was in Waunakee, or attempting.
I can comment on the one. I was pretty engaged in the one on 113 in Arboretum, next to or just down from the Arboretum School on that corner. There's already a bank and a restaurant space, dance studio, some kid activity in that area, and then adjacent to it was going to be a gas station. I think the developer had somebody selected for that would have been a gas station / convenience store type of option. So there is multiple businesses in that space now, and the neighbors were vocal enough to have that not happen.
And I could speak a little bit more to that too. One of our original speakers scheduled for tonight was Bill Ryan. He's a retail and downtown development expert that's been working for Extension for 30 years now, national reputation. And we will have him, I'm not sure if he'll have the opportunity to come in and talk to us in January or February, but one of the key points that he always makes is it's not just about a single restaurant or it's a retail mix. You have to have a critical number of stores to go anywhere. So one restaurant next to a populated area is often not enough. That same area, which doesn't seem to support that one, would support 3 next to each other because there's a sufficient enough number of restaurants to draw people. That was the original idea of downtown development.
Okay, I'm going to close. We'll have to have Chris officially close it, but I'd like to collect all of the papers with ideas on them, and we'll type these up and get them to everybody because this represents your thinking, and we want to really keep building on this thinking.
Okay, then I will just say I hope everybody has a nice several holiday weeks here coming up. This is always an interesting time. Remember all those who are in need at this time as well. Everybody's not in a happy state, but hopefully you will all have a joyous and happy holiday and New Year here before our next meeting. I'd look for a motion for somebody who would say they would want this meeting to adjourn.
I want to say Merry Christmas to you.
By Susan, second by Nyla. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.